All right, here we go. Lesson 2.5. Dividing fractions. Beautiful. Anybody know anything about dividing fractions before we begin? You divide fractions. First question is, we'll make it simple before we get into dividing fractions. Can you divide fractions? Is that a yes? Is that a collective yes?
Yeah.
The answer is no, you cannot. Might want to pay attention. All right, so since you don't know, all right, let's first talk about these things. Well, that's why you showed up today. Reciprocals. Got to know what reciprocals are before we begin to divide fractions. Anybody know what a reciprocal is? No? Really? All right. If you have the whole number 5, we know as a fraction that looks like what? 5 over 1, right? Yeah. To find its reciprocal, you flip it upside down. Now, that's not the only thing with reciprocals. With reciprocals, their value has to equal 1. Okay, so the original number, or you could say the question, times the reciprocal. Okay, this is the reciprocal. Multiplied together have to give you the value of 1. Okay, if you flip, change into, right, the original question into the reciprocal, and when you multiply across, you do not get 1, then you have not found the reciprocal. And later on, you'll see why this is a very valuable concept. All right, everybody good with the whole number? Okay. Now, when we get into these are pretty easy. If they give you a fraction, right, all you do is flip it. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. Right? 12 over 12, we get 1. Okay, in my opinion, obviously a fraction, you just flip it on its end. Whole numbers, the only way that you can miss it is if you forget to put a 1 underneath it, then sometimes it gets a little interesting. Okay, now let's get into the more interesting ones. What if they give you a decimal? Okay, very good. If they give you a decimal, you have to turn it into a fraction. Very good. From there, you apply. Now, question, we do get 4 over 1, yes? Okay, but your answer could be what here? Not 1. No. No. Let me be specific here. The reciprocal is not 1. The reciprocal is what you do when you flip what they give you. or change into what they give you. Okay, the value of the original problem and the reciprocal is always going to be 1. Okay, you just kind of need to know that, keep that in the back of your noggin. What would be the reciprocal here of 1/4? Okay, we could say 4/1, but do we normally say 4/1? What would we say here? It would just be 4. It'd just be the whole number 4, right? Okay, because we don't normally write whole numbers with a 1 underneath them. So that being said, if somebody asks you what's the reciprocal of 1/4, the proper answer would be 4. Everybody knows that to make it into a fraction, you put it under 1. Does that make sense? All right, everybody good with that? Would you like to see another decimal? Sure. Okay. Seeing who looked at their flashcards and who didn't. 4/10. What does that look like as a fraction, Zach? I believe you said 2/5. That is correct, sir. Very good. 2/5. Now, here's one of the most common mistakes, which I will share with you. Okay, if they give you a decimal, you find the fraction, and what do you forget to do if they're asking you to find the reciprocal? You forget to what? Come on, what do you forget to do? No. You forget to what? Forget to flip it, right? You'll write down 2/5. You'll be so happy, and it'd be like, no, they ask you for the reciprocal. Okay, the reciprocal is 5/2. Now, somebody, I hope, might have a question about 5/2. Emma? Anybody want to change that into a mixed number? Okay, when it comes to reciprocals, we do not flip them into mixed numbers. Okay, if they give you 2/5, the reciprocal is 5/2. You could potentially turn it into 2 1/2. Okay, but normally they stay as a mixed number. I'm sorry, an improper fraction. All right, with that being said, what if you were given this? And they asked for the reciprocal of 1 1/3. What do you got to do first? Michael? Yes, you do. Right? 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 will give us 4/3. Again, you get wrapped up in doing that, and you forget that the question is asking you about the reciprocal, which then you have to flip it. So the reciprocal of 1 1/3 is 3/4. You okay with the reciprocals? Yeah. Okay, you will that'll I guarantee you, I'm telling you as we sit here now, I think the first 3, 4, 5 questions on the quiz are about reciprocal. Got to know how to do it. With that being said, I guarantee that some of your flashcards will be the ones that are on the quiz. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. Okay, so far so good? All right. If you recall, we pictured what multiplication looked like. Yes. Remember that grid where we colored in? Remember that in the overlapping colors were the answer. Remember that? Okay. So we're going to show you the model of division. It's a little different. What this looks like. All right. So if we have the problem 4 divided by 35ths. And again, this is where you have to understand what the numbers mean in a fraction. Okay, now we went over that several times. Okay, but you have to know. Okay. The 4, and again, maybe, hopefully in elementary school, anybody know what these are called? You've seen these big, long, well, they're not called rectangles. Not since we're dividing. Anybody know? Have you ever heard the term fraction strips? Nobody's done that now. Okay, maybe not. Okay. Okay, just like we have to have 4 whole pieces, right? There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. All right, what does the 5 in the fraction mean? How many are in one whole, right? Okay. How many are in one whole? So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? How many pieces make up one whole? So I'm going to do that for each box. Because I have to have 5 in each box. Does that make sense so far? All right. The whole number is simply what you're dividing by, how many pieces you have. You have 4 of them. Okay, the denominator in the fraction tells you how many pieces make up one whole. Okay, now this is where it's a little bit different than multiplication. The numerator, what do you think the numerator is going to tell us? Are we going to color anything in? No, this is where division's a little bit different. We're not coloring anything in. What does division do? Well, we do what when we divide? We group things together. That is correct. Very good. We group things. So the 3 is going to tell us how many we're going to group together. So we're going to take 1, 2, 3, and we're going to link them together. We're going to group them together. So we take 1, 2, 3. We group them together. 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 We group them together. Okay, as you can see at the end of our fraction strip, we don't have enough to make another group, do we? Okay, first question is, how many groups do we have? We have 6. We have 6 groups. Okay, now this is where the confusion comes in my opinion. Because the denominator is no longer 5. Okay, because we're not grouping them by 5s anymore. How are we grouping them? By 3s, right? So that's our denominator. And how many do we have left? 6 2/3 is your answer. Okay, the confusion part there does come. The denominator does change now because we are grouping them differently. Okay, that hasn't happened before, right? The denominator has always been the same, but now it's changing because we're grouping them different. Does that make sense? I do another one? One more? We'll do maybe a little bit of an easier one. 2 divided by 1/3. Okay, we have our fraction strip. How many pieces are we going to break that up into? Break that up into 2. How many pieces are going to be in each box? How many? 3. And how are we going to group them? How are we going to group them? By what? By 1s, right? That's what the numerator says. So there's 1. There's 1. So how many groups do we have? Do we have any pieces and parts left over? So our answer is 6. We good? You want one more? Talk to me. One more? Okay, let's try this. Three divided by 2/3. How many pieces are we going to break our fraction strip up into? Break them up into 3s. How many are going to be in each box? How many are going to be in each box? Remember, it's always the denominator. It's going to be 3 in each box. The numerator always tells us how we are going to group them. We're grouping them by 2s, right? So we'll link those together. Link those together. Link those together. And link those together. Okay, how many groups do we have? Go ahead, just yell it out. 4. Okay, here's where you got to ask yourself, how did we group them? By what? We grouped them by 2s. That is correct. That's your denominator. How many do we have left? That's your numerator. 3 divided by 2/3 is equal to 4.5. Okay, now, in all honesty, I'll be honest with you, I need to show you the models. I'm not going to have you produce them, but they are going to be on the state test. So we're sitting here October 13th. They're going to be on at the end of April and beginning of May. Okay, you have to understand what they mean. All right, so far so good with the models? Everybody good? Okay, let's try to divide some of these. Okay. So, in all seriousness, 3/8 divided by 3/4. If somebody tells you that you can divide that, they're not telling you the truth. You can't divide fractions. Why couldn't you divide this? Anybody know the basic principle here? It's kind of like adding and subtracting fractions. How can you divide something that has 8 pieces in it that make one whole and divide something that has 4 pieces in it that makes one whole and divide it evenly? You can't do it. Okay? So in other words, here's what you have to do. The first fraction always stays the same. The second fraction, what do you think we do to it? We multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. If you do the first fraction, you will be wrong every time. You always multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so hopefully in elementary school that they told you that division undoes multiplication. Multiplication undoes division, right? Addition undoes subtraction. Subtraction undoes, right? You do the opposite. Okay, with that said, now this brings you back to lesson 2-3. What do we look to do here? What do you look to do when you have multiplication of fractions? What was the first thing I asked you to do? Kahan. Who? Cross reduce. It's going to make your life so much easier. Okay, look at this. 3 goes into 3 one time. 3 goes into 3 one time. We divide by 4, we get 1. We divide by 4, we get 2. Look at my problem now. 1/2 times 1/1. So 3/8 divided by 3/4. The answer is 1/2. Okay? That's how that works. Two fifths divided by 3/10. Do you think one of the most common mistakes are made when dividing fractions? Okay, well, yeah, some might actually divide, but you might forget to multiply by the reciprocal. You might forget to flip the second fraction. Okay, that's one of the most common mistakes. Okay, don't ever flip the first one. That's a no-no. 2/5 multiplied by 10/3. Again, at this juncture, you should know by now from lesson 2-3, anytime that you have multiplication of fractions, you always look to cross reduce. We divide by 5 here. And now we get 2/1 times 2/3. We get 4/3, which is 1 1/3. So 2/5 divided by 3/10 is equal to 1 1/3. All right, that should be fairly easy to you. The only thing that's new here is we're changing the second fraction to its reciprocal and we're multiplying. Right? That's the only difference. Here comes the problem. Oh, yeah, baby, it's getting good now. 4/5 plus 2/5 divided by 4. Question is, what do you want to do first? And how do you know? Max. The cardinal mistake has just been made. What do you have to follow if you have two different operations, Ian? You got to follow the order of operations. That's okay. Don't worry about that. That's the most common mistake made with these types of problems. I mean, your eyeballs go to, hey, I got 5s as the common denominator. Hey, that's awesome. Let's add them together. That's a big no-no. First thing we have to do is rewrite the problem. What are we going to do here? Talk to me. Kaon. Very good, sir. The reciprocal of 4 is 1/4. And I'm okay with you guys even putting parentheses around there to know to do that first. That would be awesome. What do we look to do here? Go ahead, just yell it out. Cross reduce. Very good. So now our new problem looks like that. Now what do we got to do? Jen? Find a common denominator. Hopefully you pick 10. 8/10 plus 1/10. And now we can add them together and get 9/10. So 4/5 plus 2/5 divided by 4 is 9/10. There's a lot going on there. Got to apply the reciprocal, got to know to divide and then flip it, and now we're multiplying, cross reduce, find a common denominator, multiply correctly, and add correctly. A lot going on in that simple problem. You want to do that one on your own? Go for it. See what you come up with. No. Jenny. No. All right, what'd you get? Cohen? All right, we have 3 8s. We multiply by the reciprocal. Anytime you have a division sign, we flip the number behind it. We look to cross reduce, which makes it 1/2 times 1/1 minus 1/6. 1/2 minus 1/6. Multiply by 3. Find a common denominator of 6. This is the mistake right here that a lot of you made on the quiz on Thursday. You got to reduce the lowest terms, children. The directions were very clear. You got to read the directions. Okay, last thing. Everybody feeling comfortable? Everybody good? Right? So you got to follow the order of operations, right? You got to multiply by the reciprocal. You got to look to cross reduce. And then you might have to see if you have to find a common denominator. That's a lot. Okay, the wording, how many times more? Okay, this is one of a common missed phrase. This simply means to divide. How many times more means to divide. Okay, just want to throw that out there because that is a common missed term. A lot of you wonderful people want to do what? Multiply because you see the word times. Okay, it simply means how many times more, how many times bigger. is something. You're comparing something that is being enlarged. All right, anything else with dividing fractions? Everybody good? Okay. All right, homework for this evening. 2-5. You have 1 through 5. Ooh, nope, I lied. Back up. 1 through 55, the odds. I know that may seem like a lot, but some of them are, what's the reciprocal? Yeah. Okay. Should go fairly easy. All right, you may get started on your homework.